Welcome to the Age Well Home and Lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Bradley. I'm the founder of Age Well Home and Lifestyle. This podcast is rooted in one essential truth. To age well and thrive, we must be radically curious. Curious about who we really are, about what truly matters. Curious enough to question everything we've been told so we can finally design a life and home that reflects our truest selves. Here we treat life as our masterpiece. We see ourselves as detectives gathering clues, uncovering our deepest gifts, and consciously curating a lifestyle and home that is both healing and fulfilling. Join me for solo episodes and conversations with guests where I help us get closer to the root of living our best lives in mid-age and beyond. Josh Carlsen is the founder and CEO of DocuMe. Ever since he was a kid, he's been fascinated with storytelling, which is why he believes he ended up in marketing. Helping businesses tell their stories led to a wonderful career, but it wasn't until he got a chance to start interviewing the people behind the business that he realized where his real passions are. Since then, he's had the most amazing experiences interviewing hundreds of people on camera. Being able to help them tell their stories in the most meaningful way has been incredibly rewarding for him. His passion with DocuMe is to make sure you and your loved ones' stories are recorded so you can cherish them forever. He looks forward to meeting you and bringing your stories to life. Okay, let's dive right in. First thing I want to talk about is, what is the why behind DocuMe? What was the inspiration? How did it come about?
Yeah, great question. The why really, it goes back to June of 2021. And at that point in time, our dear family friends lost their father in a tragic accident. And in that moment where everybody kind of comes together to do what they can to really rally behind the family, I offered to do a life story video for the family. And in doing so, the gentleman's name was Lou. His nickname was Brown Sugar, and Brown Sugar was a sweet man who loved the camera, and so there was lots of pictures to scan and to put into the slideshow. But while I was doing it, I kind of thought, man, I really wish I had Lou's voice. Because if we had Lou's voice, then I think that we could feel him. And that feeling was something that I missed as I put that together. So it was at that point in time where I was doing a lot of professional interviewing. And instantly saw the synergy between taking what I do professionally and interviewing business leaders and getting to know them and getting to know their whys. That I realized, why don't we do that with the people that we care the most about, our loved ones and our family. And so that's where the idea was born, and it's really just kind of become my mission to help try to protect these stories, these memories that we've created over the years with the people that mean the most to us, and make sure that they're preserved in a way that can be shared and enjoyed for generations to come.
It's amazing. I know, I think of my mom and others that have passed. My uncle actually just passed last week, 68 years old, so young. And to
Yeah.
have their stories, storytelling to me is huge. Not only to hear other people's stories, but for us to tell our own stories.
Yeah.
Have you found in interviewing people or putting these stories together that it not only helps the loved ones have that memory, but also helps that person telling this story remember their full life?
It does, yeah. I think that there's a lot of interesting stories that are often untold or are forgotten. And so, taking the time to really dig back and go through each chapter of somebody's life gives it an opportunity for those stories to kind of bubble up. And seeing somebody remember a moment in life, it kind of reminds me of if you turn on the radio and you listen to some old classics and you hear a song that instantly transports you back to an era of time in your life that was a formidable period. That's kind of like what these interviews can do. It can open up stories that were never told, or it can just bring stories that were so meaningful that have just kind of gotten buried by the busyness of life, which is totally understandable. But by taking the time to just sit down, take a beat, and really go through each one of these moments, it does reveal some memories that are just really meaningful to both the families and the person telling the story.
I love it. So how does it work from what is the whole client journey from start to finish? How does that
Yeah.
work for you?
Yeah, so every client journey starts first with just call it pre-interview. So I kind of have the primary buckets of life that I've kind of designated, but those are mine, right? And so I go into it and I sit down and I go through each one of those. And what that does is it allows me an opportunity to realize what are areas that maybe we don't want to lean into. There's a client that I've interviewed. He served in Vietnam War. That's a chapter of his life that he doesn't want to talk about, even though it had a very meaningful impact to his life. But that's an area that he didn't want to be a part of this. And so that's fine, right? So we make a note of that. There's areas that may not be in my preset kind of questionnaire. And this is the opportunity during that pre interview to really understand where we need to lean in, where we need to lean away. And that way, when the actual interview happens, it really is telling the story in the most meaningful way for the family as well as the subject. And so that pre interview sets the table. At that point, now it's kind of the fun part. This is the point in time where what we want you to do is to open up all of those old family photo albums and start pulling out all of these meaningful snapshots, or pull out the old VHSs if they're around somewhere. Because what we want to do is when we do the interview, we're going to record the interview from start to finish, but we want to incorporate as many of these family moments with real footage that we can. And it
Yeah.
just brings these stories to life in a way that is so much more deeply connected with that family. And so that's the process. We get as many of those photos, many of those B-roll assets as we can. And then at that point, it's time for the interview. So we'll schedule the interview. We bring in a professional videographer. We get all the lighting set up. We get the audio set up. And at that point in time, it's my job to just kind of walk you through this journey of life that you've created, and make sure we touch on all of these things. And so once that is completed, now that's where the fun starts happening for us because now we go into the editing process. And so we're seamlessly taking all of those B-roll footage. We're looking for background music that really plays to the moment. There was one interview I did where a gentleman was a scuba diver and he talked about diving into the ocean in the middle of the night. And it was pitch black and he turned his light off and all he could hear was his heartbeat. And so we grabbed a heartbeat. And so when he's talking about the story, we cut the camera. It literally goes to black when he says it goes to black. And all you do hear is this heartbeat underlying his story about how he was diving in the middle of the ocean at night. And so
I
we
got the
wrap all of this up.
chills when you're
It,
saying that, like just so personal to each person.
yeah, if you think about a movie and if you were to take the background music out of it, it would just it falls flat. And so we try to look at all those components to make sure that the finished piece truly is a personalized documentary that you and your family can enjoy today as the family together, which is really something that was kind of unexpected from my journey. But then it's also there, and it is that document that is preserved for generations to come. And that's the heart of what I wanted it for. But it's really been rewarding to see families kind of come together and relive these moments that they've had in the past that were so meaningful, and to get new joy out of it is really been special.
And again, it's literally creating a movie of the person's life that you're bringing in
Correct.
sound, all the senses,
Yeah.
to be preserved forever. Do you ever bring in, is it always just the one person that's in the movie, or do you ever bring in other family members?
Good question. Yeah. So a traditional setup would be one person, but we've realized there's an opportunity for couples to tell stories together. So I recently interviewed a couple that is in their mid 40s. They have three young daughters under the age of 10, I think, and they were a little bit younger than my traditional client might you might expect, let's say.
Yeah.
But they actually told me that they wanted to sit down and tell their story so that when they are 80 they will have them telling the stories to make sure they don't forget the moment they fell in love, that they don't forget the moment that they first talked about having children, or the moment that they talked about, the first career change that made them move, out of state. And so, yeah, we'll bring in families, and I'm working with a new client where we're actually talking about bringing in his wife to sit with him and tell part of their story, bringing in his son and his son's wife, as well as their grandson, to really tell the story from different perspectives. And it just provides a more holistic. So whether it's one person or whether it's kind of more of what we like to call a family retreat, there's an opportunity to make it work, whichever way fits best for the family that we're talking to.
I love that idea that it's not just for older individuals, but that you can do even multiple. If they sit down at 40 years old, 50 years old,
Yeah.
60 years old, uh-oh, that's another service for the every 10 years.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of it. I mean, it's a fairly young business, but that's something I am thinking of. If you do interview somebody at 40, well, where they are at in life at 60 is probably completely different. There
Yeah.
probably are grandkids, retirement's on the horizon. There have been so many more life moments, whether that's traveling abroad or bringing new family members into the fold. So there's an opportunity because life, it's progressive. It
Yeah.
just continues going on until it doesn't. And so, one of the things that we've come up with earlier is a tagline that we've said we want to capture your life story 20 years too soon than a day too late. And so whether you're 40, whether you're 30, whether you're your uncle who's 68, we all have incredible, really special memories in our lives. And so getting those earlier than later really is our goal to make sure that they're preserved.
How do you encourage if a family member's resistant to doing this, but other family members want them to do it? How are some ways you encourage it or kind of soften the experience?
Peer pressure. So I lean into the fact that it's not uncommon for somebody, especially later in life, to kind of be a little self-deprecating. My life isn't that special. I didn't do anything super meaningful. And really, it's as simple as saying, what would your son or daughter say if they heard you say that? I'm interviewing a high-powered attorney. He's one of the top attorneys in Oregon's history this month, and he has an amazing professional life. He has an amazing personal life. So many stories, but his stories are only as meaningful to his son in the way that they were able to do it together. And whether you're a high-powered, successful business person, or whether you've just been a hard worker your life just trying to provide for your family, there are so many meaningful stories in each one of those lives that mean the most to the children. And so we do lean into the fact that, yeah, I get it, that this may seem a little out of the ordinary for you. It may seem a little uncomfortable. It may seem a little awkward that, gosh, I don't know. Why is somebody going to want to get my life story? We're not trying to create a movie for the masses, right? And that's the difference here. We're creating a movie for your loved ones. There could be an audience of 5 or 15 or 30 people that want to hear these stories. And those people are the people that you come together with around the holidays. Those are the people that when life gets hard, they come together and rally behind you. Those are the people that when you're celebrating, that you want them to be a part of your life. And so we just lean into the fact that, yeah, you may not want it. You may not be sure about it, but your children really are, because at the end of the day, when we lose someone we love, the thing we want most is that person back. And DocuMe is just a way that hopefully we can provide that in a minute form, but in a very meaningful form where you still have your loved ones sharing the stories that you got to live through together.
I'm trying not to tear up already.
Yeah.
Like literally, do you find that families watch the videos, watch the movies for the older individuals before they transition, or do you find that they often save that to watch till after?
So pretty new. So I've not yet lost a client.
Okay, okay.
And so I'm a little early to be able to say that with confidence. But what I would say, what I can say confidently is that the people that have watched it immediately after the video is finished being editing, those people have watched it together, and it's created new memories. It's created a more meaningful way to look back at your life. Because if you do wait until the moment when you've lost somebody. It's still great to relive those memories. It's still great to have everybody come together. But if you can do it while we're all together, while your loved one is still here, it's honestly something magical that I did not expect out of this. But I'm really happy that it's come to be one of the outcomes. So,
It can probably bring up more questions.
yeah,
Like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that about you. Tell me more about that before they transition.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me one or two powerful stories of clients that you've worked with.
Yeah, so a favorite story of mine is a grandmother. She just turned 88. She lived a very storied life. She's a very humble woman. And so she was very reticent to want to do this. So it did take some peer pressure from the grandkids to kind of coax her into it. But in doing the interview, she shared a story about how when she was a 12-year-old girl, she'd been biking around Portland where she wasn't supposed to. She had been gone all day and she got grounded by her mother. And the fact that she got grounded is not meaningful. What is meaningful is the day that she was grounded, there was a massive flood in Portland, that displaced tens of thousands of people and took people's lives. People died in this flood. And she told me that if she was not grounded, she would have been biking down by the river that day and she probably would have died. And so that's one of these stories that the granddaughter never knew about. And so it's one of these things where a child getting grounded at age 12 actually saved a legacy of family from, kids and grandkids, and now she has great grandkids. And so these are some of the stories that can bubble up that you didn't know about before, that are meaningful, but maybe just don't seemingly rise to the occasion during general conversation with the family. But once you find out about it, it is one of those touching moments of like, wow, I'm really lucky to be here today because grandma got grounded when she was 12. So that's one of the stories that really sticks out. But there's lots of little stories in life that happen. The scuba diving one is an interesting story. I had an opportunity to interview my dad. One of my
Yeah.
questions is, "What's the craziest thing you've ever done?" I'm glad I waited until I was in my 40s to ask that question, as opposed to when I was a child, if I'd asked my dad, because he did some really crazy things that, like, I'm scratching my head. I thought I was a rebel child, but
Oh,
he really showed me that he was the rebel above all. But there's just so many amazing stories, and it's really, I feel it's a gift of mine to be able to kind of politely interject myself into a family's history and get to have these conversations, because they're meaningful stories to me, so I can only imagine how meaningful they are to the families that get to see them.
yeah. And to have somebody outside of the family, I feel like that's a main part of this because they're not influenced by, maybe I shouldn't share that, maybe this, even though the family is going to watch at a later point. You
Yeah.
being not part of the family, I feel like that would allow people to open up a bit more. Somebody that doesn't have a judgment around stuff.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation because I think as families we all carry a certain amount of baggage. There's different family dynamics, and I'm coming in as Switzerland. I'm a non-biased party.
Yeah.
Really, my goal is to just ask the questions and let you tell your story the way that only you can tell it.
Yeah, and then they have the freedom to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So DocuMe is newer.
Yeah. Yep.
What is your intention with it? What is the vision of it in the future?
I think my vision is to try to eliminate regret when it comes to end of life scenarios. And so I think, well, part of, as a business owner, part of my job is to do research and to understand my space as much as I can. And one of the hard facts that I came to realize is that about a third of all deaths either happen suddenly or what's considered rapid onset. And so, when these life changes happen and they happen so rapidly, whether it's sudden or maybe it's a span of over months, it's a lot of trauma that's going on, and it's a lot of things that we're trying to work through and trying to cope with. And so my goal is to try to get these stories in a way that's outside of that. It's before all of this heaviness has entered the family dynamics. And so we get a very pure form of our loved ones and the stories that they have. And so my goal is to try to reach as many families as possible, and show them that it's not too late. You can take the time to do it today. And so ultimately, I want to try to eliminate this end of life regret that people have and the sadness that they have by making sure families come together. Now, whether that's through DocuMe, obviously, I would love to capture as many life stories as possible. But part of what I've started kind of doing is talking to families. Maybe it's not a good fit, maybe they're not comfortable with it. But I just talked to a young couple. They have a 18-month-old baby, and I said, it would be really good for you two to sit down once a week or once a month and just get your phone out, hit record, and just talk about the life moments that you've seen with your baby. Whether it's their first footsteps that they took this month, whether it's the fact that you realize that, oh my gosh, they actually like mushrooms or random foods that they're trying. All of these little minutia stories that just kind of happen with life. Take a minute to just document those and preserve those. And that way, later on, you have this treasure trove of stories that you've been a part of, but you're hearing the meaning and how emotionally important it is. Because it's one thing to document their stories, but my goal is to do more than that. It's to talk about how meaningful these stories were to the person, to the family, to the loved ones. And so I'm just trying to get the word out as much as possible that don't wait. Take the time today and try to procure and salvage and save as many of these stories as you can in whatever form works the best for you. Because I promise you, the day you lose somebody is the day that those stories will be priceless forever.
The pictures. I mean, that's exactly it. And I love that you brought up it may be working with you, it may
Yeah,
be how people do it on their own. Taking
exactly.
those daily pictures, and it also that advice to take the moments on a daily basis or weekly basis. It also allows you to pause. It allows you to pause and say, interesting. Reflect back on that week. And maybe, in my work in regards to lifestyle design and home and consciously curating the next week. If that past week
Yeah.
wasn't exactly the image or pictures that you want to create, can you pause and then choose differently as the week moves forward? That's what I think of.
Very true. Yeah, it is an opportunity to reflect
Yeah.
and see, was there something that we really enjoyed? Should we lean more into that? Was there something that, gosh, I wish that I'd handled that better, or I wish that it had just been different?
Yeah.
So how can we get in front of it in that next week or that next month? So yeah, it can have a really meaningful impact for your future preservation of stories, but it can also just have a meaningful impact in your future direction of your life.
Yes, I love this. So share your website and where
Yeah.
people can find you and how they can connect with you for a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So the website is documehistory.com. So DOCUME history.com. That's where the website is. Got my phone number on there. There's a form you can fill out to kind of get the ball rolling. That's the best way to get a hold of me. It's a great way for you to kind of see some of the footage we have. We'll be adding more videos soon. It's just really, we're really excited because the change that we're seeing with the families, it's priceless for us just as much as we feel like the stories being saved are priceless for the loved ones.
Yeah, you become literally an intimate part of these families, knowing these
Yeah,
stories, holding that treasure in addition to the family having it forever.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for creating this. Thank you for joining me. I hope lots more people create videos and memories for a lifetime with you.
Well, thanks for having me, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to the Age Well Home and Lifestyle Podcast. If this episode sparks something in you, share it with a friend or family member. Let it be the start of a real life, meaningful conversation because that's how we grow together. And I'd love to hear from you. What topics are you curious about? What questions are on your mind? Reach out and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, live true, and keep creating a life and home that's aligned with your truest self.